BTTRYS PEGRAM. Let's see here. All right. It's turn 4. It's 8 o'clock in the morning. It's the CSA's turn. So we're going to go for the sequence of activities, the movement phase. Then we go to the command and determination segment, and we have determined that Heath is still the primary commander. Therefore, all units get to enjoy 8 activity points of movement. Then we go to the primary movement segment, where the brigades under the primary commander get to move. As for reinforcement entry, there is none at this time. First thing we're going to do is move the batteries. I'm moving Crenshaw and Mare and all the others, but what I got to do is flip them over to limber. They do flip fine, don't they? Okay. Now, movement along road for the artillery is 1. Their commander is 1 if he decides to move. Not allowed to get into the enemy range of influence, and I'm not allowed to be adjacent to enemy unit. Woods, it costs me nothing. Movement off-road for me will be, for limbered, is 1.5. Let's see here. Battle line, or excuse me, limbered to unlimbered, non-applicable. For artillery, limbered, it's either 1 or 0, and since I've moved, I am going to give me 1 to get that moved out of there. Additional costs and activity points. If I'm in the range of influence of the enemy, it'll cost me +1. And if I'm adjacent, it's not allowed, and end woods is 1. So, I'm not allowed to move unlimbered, but I am going limbered. That gives me 1. I'm not going to be in the enemy range of influence, and I'm not going to be adjacent to the enemy. As for movement off-road, limbered, it's going to cost me 1.5. And movement along the road for limbered is 1. As I said before, unlimbered to limbered isn't going to cost me anything. And if I do get into the enemy range of influence, it's going to cost me +1. If I get adjacent to the enemy, 0. However, if I do that, I got 2 asterisks. That means I believe it says that it'll cost me 10 disorganization points. So I'm going to avoid that at all cost. Anyway, I've calculated, since I have a maximum total of 8, first people are Pegram and Crenshaw. I'm going to move 2.5 X's to Foxtrot 34. Find Foxtrot 34. I'll move them there. Next is McGraw and Brander. They're on Indio 31. I'm going to move them to Foxtrot 34. They'll be 4.5 hexes to give me my 8 activity. So I'm going to move them. Stack it there. And then I've got Pegram and Zimmerman. Or should I say PD and Jackson. They're at Juliet 30. And I'll be 5.5 hexes. And I'm going to move them to Foxtrot 34. Limbered and stacked. Now, let's see. As you remember, I had them 2 per hex. I just left them that way. When they were in column, the maximum number was 9. So since they were both 4, I kept them 2 per hex. They limbered up and they moved here. They're not in column. Now I can go 24. So they're going to stack up, and their objective is to fire into here. Okay, now I'll get that horse artillery for Jackson under there. And my batteries are taken care of. Next, under primary movement, I am going to move Archer. In advanced movement, the terrain is still the same, 1.5 for off-road and 1 for on-road. And as Jackson goes, I'm going to move him from L31, excuse me, K28 to L31. So I take Jackson, or excuse me, Archer, and move him. He's now adjacent to the enemy. Take the rest of his brigades. And move him. And then take the rest. Let's see here. Davis. He's on H29, and I'm going to advance move him to Juliet 31. And Juliet 31. Excuse me. Juliet 33. So I've got Davis HQ and Indio 34. Take his flank. And move his flank at Hotel 35. I then move the rest of the brigade. 2, 4, 6, 8. Okay, I've got Archer at Lima 31. I've got Davis at Indio 34. I've got Brockenborough at Hotel 31. I've got Pettigrew at Golf 31. And I've got my batteries at Foxtrot 33. Now, we'll go to the brigade movement segment. I have nothing. Go to the command movement segment. I have nothing. Go to the artillery fire phase. I have nothing. That leads us to the combat fire phase, which will be the next video. I'll screw this down here. This is where the action's going to be. Combat fire phase will happen here, because it's adjacent. Combat fire phase will happen here. Combat fire phase will happen here, here, and here. All line markers will be in a combat fire. Keep gaming.